Hello there, it's Antrice, and welcome to another episode of the Savvy Painter Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Trekell Art Supplies. For over 30 years, Trekell has been obsessed with the art of brush making, and now they're applying that same obsession to professional-grade artist panels. Both their brushes and panels are made right here in California at their Hesperia factory. Go to Trekell.com and use promo code SAVVY16 to get 15% off your next order. This week, I talk with Jennifer Farris from Studio Gallery in San Francisco. Jennifer Farris and her husband Rab Terry opened Studio Gallery in late 2003 to showcase the work of Bay Area artists. They hang a new show about once a month, alternating between solo and themed group shows on subjects like Bay Area cityscapes and landscapes or work inspired by food and drink. You will really enjoy this episode if you have ever wanted to know what it's like running a gallery. Jennifer talks about what criteria she uses to determine if an artist is ready for a solo show with her, how artists and galleries can work together to make a better experience for collectors. Plus, she shares tips for artists who sell their own work online. And she also talks about how she handles changes and experimentation in the artist's work. And I'll give you a hint, it has a lot to do with communication. Studio Gallery is in San Francisco. Their website is studiogallerysf.com. Here is Jennifer Farris. Jen, thank you so much for being on the Savvy Painter Podcast with me. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you, Antrice. We are super happy to be included.
I would love to know, how did you start your gallery? What is the story behind Studio Gallery?
Well, we really started the gallery on kind of a lark. My husband, Rab Terry, is a painter, and we both love art, and we had spent a lot of time. Rab spends a lot of time painting, obviously, but we spend a ton of time going to galleries, going to museums, doing studio visits. Open studios is a huge thing. We just loved art, and we always thought it would be fun to have a gallery. And we both we started the gallery about 14 years ago, and we both thought, it would be great to have some place in the neighborhood. So anytime a little space came available in the neighborhood, we would look at it. And it was just like, horrible. Okay, here come the fire engine. And we never found anything that was even remotely good. So I came home one day from my day job and parked my car on the little commercial street in our neighborhood, Polk Street. And I saw this little space that was available. And I came home and I said, Rab, there's this awesome little space available. And I described it to him. And he said, oh my God, it's such a pit. That place has been available for months. You just never noticed it because it's so horrible. And so anyway, eventually, of course, we got the pit and Rab fixed it up and it was great. So we just kind of did it because we thought it would be fun. And Rab was painting full time at that point, and I was working actually as a consultant for myself. So we had day jobs. And so we just kind of fitted in, and we sat down and thought, what's the worst that can happen? And we just sort of tried it, and it turned out to be really fun, and it wasn't the economic disaster that we thought it may have been. And so we just kept going, and it was great. The first couple of years, we really learned a lot.
I'm sure. Yeah. And 14 years ago, that would have been, right. So you're talking 2002-ish?
Yeah, I think towards the end of 2003. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm actually kind of curious, because you just sparked something in the way that I tend to think and the way that I make plans. Is I'm also one of those people that I'm like, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen? And then I kind of look at here's every disaster that can occur if I go through this. And if it does, what am I going to do? So I'm kind of curious, when you guys were thinking about opening it up, what were some of your worst case scenarios that you were contemplating?
Well, I was a project manager for years. And so, this is exactly what I did for a living. And so we sat down and thought, we found, the terrible little space, and it was really small. And they said they would give us a 1-year lease, which nowadays it would be really hard, I think, to get. But they were like, yeah, we don't care. And so we sat down and did the math and figured out how much money could we really lose if we never sold a single piece of art. And so we guessed because we had no idea. We didn't know that your electric bill, if you're a business, the rates are different than the electric bill if you just have an apartment, So we got some things really right and some things really wrong. But basically we just figured, what if we never sell anything and we lose every cent that we put into it? How much would it be? And it was like, oh, this is, it would be like our MBA.
Mm-hmm. We can survive that.
Yeah. And we figured that we would learn a lot. We knew that we would be successful selling Rab's work because his studio is an old Navy base that's not accessible to the public. And so we knew that having a place where his work was available to the public would be a good move. So we figured at least we could sell his work a little bit and he would have a place to show it. So that would be good. But that was really the main thing. We figured we don't have any employees. We didn't then and we don't now. So it was really more just about spending our time and money.
Right. And when you first started it, were you thinking it would be a gallery that shows Rab's work, or were you always thinking this will be like a gallery for lots of different people?
We decided, again, just kind of because it was what we were interested in, that we would show work from local artists. Mm-hmm. So I think when we first opened, we had work from 5 people, and we decided that we just kind of thought that we would stick with that. And we knew that we would always have more work than what Rab was doing. At that point, he was doing a lot of painted canvas floor cloths, and so those didn't go on the wall. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we knew we would always have. So yeah, we had, even our first month, we had work from 5 different artists in there.
Was it a strategic decision to only show local artists?
So in retrospect, it was a strategic decision. But I mean, we just kind of thought it would be fun because we knew a lot of artists. Rab's in a huge complex with a lot of people. And I knew a lot of artists just because I had always known a lot of artists, and even before we had met. And so we just thought it would be fun. When we stopped and thought about it later, we realized that it was a really good sort of gatekeeping function, because now we're contacted by people who are in the Bay Area, but everybody else we can sort of, just say, oh, sorry, we don't show work from people outside of the, the greater Bay Area. Mm-hmm. But at the time, it was just what we were interested in doing more than anything.
Right. And what
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious. This is a question that I get often, and it seems like the perfect time to ask you because I know you're hanging a show very soon, next week, I believe. So I'm curious, how do you, as a gallery, work with the artist to determine what pieces go into the show, and how can you describe that process?
Yeah, we do a couple of different kinds of shows. We do solo shows, or sometimes we do like 2-person shows, and then we do invitational group shows that have some sort of theme behind them. And then we do huge juried shows where we send out a call for entries and people apply. So for the solo shows, like the show that we're hanging next week is, I think, our 5th solo show for Lindsay Kustish. And we basically just tell her to do whatever she wants, and whatever she paints is what we hang. So we go and make sure that, things are coming along, and if she needs any help or, anything, which of course she doesn't, but we just basically say, go for it. Let's see what you want to show. We figure the artists have so many restrictions on them, whether it be size, price, subject matter, timing, that if you get a solo show, that it should just be a chance to show the world what you want to show.
That's like every artist's dream, I think. I'm like, this isn't even airing yet, but I'm hearing like in my head, all these people just going, yes.
Well, we don't do that many solo shows.
Right.
We do. This year we're doing 6. And we will certainly come over. If you have too much work, we will, of course, be more than happy to help you, edit it. But that's not usually, there aren't too many people that really have that problem.
The editing problem. And I imagine, I always stop myself because I really don't like putting words in people's mouth. But if somebody has a solo show, I imagine there's already a relationship there. And so it's so much easier to just say, sure, do what you want, because you already know them.
Yes.
I totally just put words in your mouth, even when I said I was going to.
No, it's true. So if we look at our schedule for this year, for example, we're doing Lindsay's show. I think this is her 5th solo show. We'll do a solo show with Kana Aoki, and this is, I don't know, maybe our 3rd with her. Rab will do a solo show. And this is probably his fifth in the galleries, maybe. Bill Cohn will do a solo show. It's maybe his fourth or fifth. Michael Chamberlain will do one in the fall, and it'll be his fourth or fifth probably. And then we'll doing a show with Denny Holland, and it's his first solo show with us.
Oh, wow. That must be exciting.
It is. It's really exciting. It's always fun to see what people come up with. And some people, have work ready months ahead of time. Some people paint up to the last day. It's just, we're curious to see what people come up with. And that's what we're interested in. So, we definitely have an idea of what's coming because we go visit and do studio visits and, talk about all the work. But I think it's a great experience for us, just like everybody else. We can't wait to see what the show looks like either.
Yeah. What are some of the criteria you use to determine if an artist is ready for a solo show?
For us, because we just don't have that many slots during the course of the year, it's somebody that we want to see more of. We want to see what they do if they get a chance to stretch their wings. It's somebody we want to see more work from. It's somebody that we have a relationship with, and we don't want to give somebody a solo show or even a two-person show if we don't think that we can do a reasonably good job selling the work. We know how much effort goes into getting ready for these shows. And for most of the people, we plan the shows about a year in advance. Some people have shows like every year and a half or so. And, you don't want to have somebody spend all that time doing all that work and holding that work back from other shows and competitions or, opportunities, and then not think that we're going to, do a reasonably decent job selling it. So we need to have some sense that we're going to do right by them.
Right, right. In a perfect world, right?
Yes.
What are some of the things that artists that you represent could do to help you make things easier in terms of if an artist came to you and basically said, how can I help you sell my work? Aside from the obvious of create good work in the first place, what are some of the other things that in terms of their relationship with you or how they interact with the gallery or, things like that would be really helpful?
If it's an artist that we already show,
yeah, somebody that you already show, somebody you already had a relationship with, or maybe, like a better way to ask it would be like, what are some of the ways that your artists have helped you or things that they've done that have really made the show easier or the collectors happy or something like that?
Well, I think for a lot of the artists that we do shows with, we love doing some sort of an artist talk or a demo or, whatever they're comfortable with. Not everybody wants to stand in front of a group and, extemporize about their artwork, but that sort of thing is always interesting and fun, and collectors love that. We have a lot of artists that are really have spent a lot of time learning social media, and we've all sort of come through that process together. We are learning and, get better at all of that as well. And having a social media presence is certainly a big asset. It's like the modern day version of a mailing list, and that's always helpful. For a lot of the artists that we work with, they sell their work themselves. They sell their work through us. They may sell their work through other galleries in Northern California, for example. And, it's one of the things that's really important to us is that there's a consistency between the pricing. We don't want people to find that a comparable piece is priced differently at different places. And so that's something that I think is a sort of a behind the scenes key to success. We also, for the most part, we have an idea for the people that we work really closely with. We know what else they're doing during the year, and we can tell people, if they're going to be in a show in Seattle, we can tell the people that we know in Seattle, we can help publicize that, and we can also give people an idea of awards, public art commissions, all that sort of different thing. Just keeping us up to date with what's going on with them is helpful as well, especially if there's a change in the direction of their work. That's something that, it's good to have background about what's going on. How come you're painting butterflies now? Whatever.
Yeah.
So that's always just good too, just keeping up with the story.
Yeah. And I'm kind of that keeping up with the story, I think is a really good way to put it. The story behind the art is, I think, something that is more interesting than I think artists sometimes realize. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, or if you have any stories about that, or something that you've seen in terms of either an artist speaking about their work or changing directions and the reasons why. And sometimes there's a great story behind it.
I don't know if I have any huge examples that leap to my mind right off the cuff, but I think for us, a lot of the time, if we have a show in the gallery, like right now, we have a show with, I guess, 35 different artists. And by now, the show's got another week. Several of them have sold everything. So what's on the walls now evolves a little bit during the course of the show. But, we try to understand a little bit about each of the pieces, because even if you come to the reception where a lot of the artists are there, that's like one afternoon out of a whole month's worth of show. So part of it is we try to make sure that we understand what the story is behind the work, even if the artist isn't able to be there and tell that story themselves. An artist talk or something like that is a good opportunity to be able to hear what they have to say. But a lot of the people, I think, are just, curious about individual pieces. It's particularly an individual piece that you buy. And so the more information that we can give them about that piece on behalf of the artist in most cases, because they may not happen to be there when the person comes to see the work, is always helpful. Because we only show local artists, you get a chance to meet the artists a lot in our gallery. People just come by, collectors come by, neighborhood people come by, artists come by. We got people just coming by to say hi all the time. So you may actually meet somebody who painted a piece of yours just, because you happen to be there at the right time. Some collectors don't want to meet the artist. We definitely have had that happen several times. I'm like, oh, the person that did your big pieces here, do you want to meet them? No, that's okay.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Some people are shy, some collectors are shy, some artists are shy. It's, there's lots of different ways. But a lot of people get a chance to meet the artists in the gallery because everybody's just, there all the time. So that's always kind of fun too.
Yeah. Do you think it's because they're shy or they're trying to be polite? Or do you think sometimes, my equivalent, I guess, would be if there was an actor or something like that I really admired and I saw them, I could imagine not wanting to disturb them. But I can also imagine kind of going like, I don't really want to meet this person because I have a perception that I want to keep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I remember reading one of my favorite authors when I was quite a bit younger at a book sign. He did a reading at a book signing. And I said, I've read this book 7 times. And he just looked at me and said, really?
Oh my God.
And I just thought, oh God, I've totally humiliated myself. But it was also just like, it was just a funny moment. Mm-hmm. Well, I think some people, we have a lot of collectors, a lot of people who've bought work from us over the years. And we, again, because we're local and not certainly, a lot of our collectors and buyers are not in the city anymore, but, a lot of them are. And so we definitely have some people who are just shy and don't, necessarily want to meet anybody.
Right.
But yeah. And then sometimes, you meet artists and like you said, you're not happy with the results. And we figure that if we're happy with the artists, our customers and clients and collectors will be too. So that's a very important criteria for us, is we want the artists to be people that we're happy to spend time with, whether they're outgoing or shy or whatever. And that's a big criterion for us.
Yeah, because you're entering into a long-term relationship, and you want to be around people that you enjoy.
That's so true. Whenever we're invited to speak about the gallery, one of the questions that almost always get is, what criteria do you have for accepting artists into the gallery? And the first one is, that you're not an ass. And people always think that's really funny, but, it's really true. It's like, if I wanted to work with jerky, difficult people, I would go back to my old job. We're not doing this because we want to spend time with people that we don't like. We're doing this because we want to spend time with people that we are interested in, people that are interested in us, people that have goals and interests that align with ours. And it's the same thing with our collectors too, So it's very important to us.
This episode is sponsored by Turkel Art Supplies. Courtney Bridges manages the marketing campaigns for Turkel Art Supplies. She keeps a close eye on social media trends and keeps current with this changing landscape by sharing information and comparing notes with artists. It is a great example of how your community can help you stay on top of changes.
Now that Instagram kind of changed their algorithm, if you're using keywords like sale or go to my website and stuff like that, that's when they kind of aren't showing your feed as much to a lot of people. So you have to make sure you're wording properly so your posts are being seen when they know you're trying to use the platform to sell to people, promote your website. If you're using certain words, they're going to know that, and they're not going to put you at the top of the feed unless you pay to promote. When we post, a product or trying to get people to come to the website, we've definitely seen a change in that ever since the algorithms have been updated.
Go to Trakell.com and use promo code SAVVY16 to get 15% off your next order. You mentioned that the fact that artists are selling their work through social media and how important their social media accounts are, et cetera, et cetera. It seems like there's sort of a natural tension that would happen there. Do you see that as any sort of a threat to your business, or how do you navigate as a gallery? How do you navigate that whole situation?
I think, because of the time that we opened in the early 2000s, by then the internet was a thing. The first thing we did when we opened the door was put out a place for customers to sign and put down their email address or their street address, and, building a mailing list, which was the old version of social media. So we've always been conscious that that's an opportunity and that that's something that's out there for us as well as for the artists. And I think in the modern world, there's there's a different model that emerges. And part of it is that you have to realize that a lot of artists, not everybody certainly, but a lot of them are going to have online presence. They may or may not sell their work, but they're going to have an online presence perhaps. They're going to sell their work online perhaps. We're going to have an online presence. We sell work online to people that aren't physically in the gallery. And your other galleries are also going to have the same thing. So you may have an artist whose work is on our website. They may have different pieces at other galleries that are on other websites. They may have work that's on their own website or on social media, whatever. And it's just, I think as long as the work is consistently priced and managed, then that's just part of the world. And you just need to put your big girl pants on and accept it.
I love it.
But for artists, I think the thing that's really important is that you don't figure out that, well, if the gallery sells my work for $100, I'm going to sell it for $50. That's a classic mistake. And our customers are smart. We figure that if your work is out there and it's priced inconsistently, people are going to find that out. And
right. Part
of what we do is we try to make sure that if you're paying a price in the gallery, that you're paying a fair price for the artist's work at that point. We, of course, everybody, we want everybody to get as much money as they can for their artwork. But we also want to make sure that if you're selling the work for half price, that, we're not going to double it and put it in the gallery. That's just goofy. And customers figure that out. And
yeah,
I think that's part of how you navigate that is you say, if you're going to raise your prices, everybody's prices need to go up. And that's something that is a little bit more of a challenge, and that oftentimes artists need to manage that. If we're talking to somebody about raising their prices, it's like, well, if I raise the prices, are you comfortable raising the prices? Are your other galleries going to be comfortable raising the prices for comparable work in the next, time frame, the next year, whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I think, an important key to working through the digital world.
Yeah, that is really interesting because I hope by now everybody knows that, like, if you're working with a gallery, it is kind of silly to undercut them.
No, they don't interest. There are tons of people that have not figured that out yet. There's a lot of people that don't know that.
Stop it, you guys.
Pricing is always a challenge for people, and it's a tough learning curve, and I completely understand that. Yeah, but it is kind of goofy to think that you're going to sell something, someplace else for a lower price, and then somebody's going to see something comparable. It's not the same item, but it's like, yeah, of course that's silly. Then why would I buy it from the gallery?
Right. And then, but what's interesting is I never I'll have to admit, I hadn't really thought about the issue of the price across the board between galleries and having to coordinate that between two separate galleries. That's really interesting.
No, I think that's definitely a thing.
How does that happen? Do you get on the phone with the other gallery, or does the artist manage it, or like what does that even look like?
No, I think generally it would be up to the artist to manage that. But, you know, it's like if we have pieces that are coming into a show and it's 10 by 10, you know, it's like, well, what are your pieces selling for at other places for that size?
Right.
That's a baseline. And you don't want to be undercutting other galleries. You don't want to be undercutting what you're selling them for yourself. And for a lot of people, I think that there's a thought process that goes into, well, what are we going to charge, you know, this year? If your work is really popular and it's, you know, you're raising your prices, then you want to think about the different markets. And some people are really transparent about their pricing and other people not so much. And that's true for galleries as well.
What is your opinion on that? Because I've had a lot of artists, this is a topic of conversation. I think there was a huge topic of conversation about this on Facebook recently within Savvy Painter. And the question was, do you put your prices on your website, and why or why not? And there was, you know, and that generates this huge conversation because there's a lot of people that want transparency. And then there's a lot of other people that were like, no, well, if they see the price, then they'll go away, or, you know, like all these different reasons for it. And I definitely have a pretty strong opinion about it for myself, but I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I wouldn't tell somebody how to manage their own website. You know, I think that's a personal decision. For us on our website, we have a lot of people who are not local who look at our website and want to see what the pictures are that are in the show. And we put, you know, the artist's name, the price, the medium, the size, and whether or not it's framed there. And if you're interested in the piece, you know, those are the questions you're going to ask anyway. So if I put the picture out there and don't put that information, then I'm going to get a phone call or an email saying, Jen, I like the one with, you know, the street scene in the rain in it. How much is it? It's just like, you know, you're just going to be telling people anyway. So it's
over and over. Yeah.
Yes. And, you know, so I think you quickly get to the point where thinking that's being clear about that is really helpful. I think for us also, we have a lot of customers, even when we first started, who were, you know, we really, of course, didn't have people that were buying work from us from all over the country or in other countries like we do now. But we'd have people that, you know, want to know, is it worth my while to come across town or go into the city to see the work? Is this something that I'm interested in, I can afford? Is it something that is the size that I want? You know, we have a lot of people locally who spend time working on our website when they could just come into the gallery, just because they can do that at 2 a.m. And that, I think that's super useful. So for us, we always put the key pieces of information, including the retail price, on our website. When we put pictures on Instagram or Facebook, we tend to not do it just because it's not really, it's more like a broader arena than just our website. But if you want to see what something is, you just click over to our website and you'll find it there. So for us, we figure it's a question of being transparent. We also, though, don't really discount. So when you see that the price is whatever the price, $200, then you're not going to come into the gallery and negotiate with us. And that's part of being transparent for us as well. And that's another issue. If you put the price on and then you give everybody a discount off of that, then that makes things more complicated. So for us, it's like, this is the price. We feel like this is a good price. It's a fair price. And there you go.
It is what you see. You get what you see. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody pays the same thing. And, you know, it's...
Yeah, I agree.
We're not looking at you when you come in and sizing you up and saying, he's going to pay the jumbo price. You know, we don't do that.
Right. Which is just, you know, which to me is just kind of, I don't know. I think as a customer or as a collector, I want to be treated with respect. And I have a lot of respect for the people who buy my work. And I wouldn't want to, the galleries that I work with, like, why would you want to disrupt a good thing? Like, why would you want to, I don't know. Like, I get it. I think to me, it's about maybe not trusting yourself and not trusting your work enough and getting a little bit too desperate to make a sale that you're willing to kind of, in a way, jeopardize a relationship. Because I think it confuses the collectors too.
What?
If you're giving discounts, then what's the real, then the obvious question would be, well, what's the real value of this artwork, and why is it this much here and that much there? And in which place am I being overcharged? Where's the actual price?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, everybody has a different business model, and
right.
We tend to be a little bit more commonsensical. I think for us, it just made more sense to do it this way. But, I totally understand that different places have different business models. And I think for a lot of artists, if you're putting your prices on your website and some of your galleries aren't, that may be, that's something to think about as well.
Mm.
So it may be really easy to decide if you're putting your prices on your website, if you're just showing with us, because that's what we do. But if you have a more diverse landscape of galleries and places to manage, then that's a
good point.
Sort of situation. Yeah. So, everybody needs to kind of figure out what works for them. But
and communicate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm guessing within a group show, you may have some artists that you're just beginning to work with. Do you help them at all with following up on that pricing question? It's so difficult for a lot of people to price their work, and it causes a lot of anxiety with artists because they're like, I don't know, what do I do? Do you help them price the work?
Yeah, we will.
Yeah. Okay. And how do you determine that?
Well, we do a couple of shows a year. We just do a few because we get so many entries, but we do a couple shows a year where we publish a call for entries and people apply. And in that group, there are usually some people who've never shown their work in galleries before or who are just starting out. And in that sort of situation, of course, we'll help you give some advice. If people have their work out there already, then they've, in many cases, sort of established a baseline. And it's working off of that. If you're really an established artist or you've got some sales track record out there, then obviously we want to respect that. But if you're just starting out, we generally advise people to get some momentum to price the things so that they will, to recognize the fact that there's no sales history and that you're just starting out, and let's get some interest and some momentum and some movement. So we definitely don't say, come in and charge $1 bazillion for your work if you're a just starting out artist. But we also don't want people to price their work too low, because then it's just not worth your time and effort. And we know how much time and effort people put into making their work.
Mm. What are some of the do's and don'ts for artists who are looking to approach a gallery?
Oh, gosh. Well, I think we tell everybody that you should visit. And I think we've known so many artists who've had problems with galleries over the years. And I think a lot of that, if you are local and you can get a chance to go and see the gallery and meet the people and see how they interact and how people are treated and what the work looks like, I think that's a really good piece of advice. If it's a gallery that's out of town, obviously that's much more challenging. But we always tell people to check out the gallery if you can in person. I think that's always good advice. And looking at people's websites will also give you a really good idea of the kind of work they show. I know so many artists who've been so disappointed that they haven't been accepted into different shows or different galleries when their work was really completely not a fit for that space at all. Mm. And they were, and it was just like, gosh, you're beating yourself up when they don't show that kind of work. So part of it is just being familiar with the program at the gallery and making sure that the people that run the gallery are people that you want to be in a long relationship with or doing business with. Not everybody is somebody you really want to be in that kind of relationship with. And that's an important thing to think about too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would say that. I think also knowing the right way and the right time to approach a gallery is really important. That's where I think a lot of people make mistakes. I have people come up to me at receptions where we have hundreds of people and want to show me pictures of their artwork on their iPhone.
Oh my God, really?
Oh yeah. And it's like, gosh, this is really not a good time. But I think, for that, I got a note from somebody last week. I'm coming in on Monday with my work on a thumb drive. Is that good for you? It's like, no, no, that's not good for me. Do not come. So we just get all kinds of wacky things. We have, for us, we have a certain way that we do things, and most galleries have some sort of a process. And part of it is you just want to figure out what the process is at the gallery. And generally it's not, calling them during a busy time, showing up and pretending to be a customer. That's a good one. I hate that.
Wow.
Showing up with your portfolio unannounced, just saying, hi, look at my stuff. That's like, oh my goodness. So I think there's a part of it is just figuring out if it's a space that you're interested in working with, do you think your work is a fit, which of course is not the final decision, but is important. And then figuring out what's the process that gallery uses to consider new artists. Are they even considering new artists? Mm-hmm. And if so, what's the process that they use? And then sticking to that process, because that's the way that they manage incoming submissions. And you want to follow that, because generally stepping around that process is probably not going to be a plus.
Right. And so it really comes down to being, first of all, doing a little bit of homework and learning about the gallery before you approach them, and also doing it on their terms instead of your terms. So doing it on the gallery's terms rather than what's convenient for the artist. Yeah.
Yeah. And have somebody who's came to the art world with a business background, I think if you think of it as, forget about the fact that it's art just for a second. Obviously, this is not something you want to do for more than a minute, but just for a second, if you think about the relationship between you and the gallery owner, it's like if you have something that you want a shop to have, how would you approach it if it were, a clothing store? How would you approach it if it were a grocery store? How would you approach it if you had something that you wanted the local hardware store? You wouldn't just walk in and say, hey, here I am with my cool new tool. Let's try it now. You wouldn't do that.
Right. Or you wouldn't go to the grocery store on the day before Thanksgiving and try to pitch them with something.
Right. Passing out free samples in the aisles. No, you probably wouldn't do that. So, and sometimes that's a useful model to think of. Obviously, we all love art, and every business and industry has their own rules of doing things. But sometimes it's just a little bit of common sense. And galleries, when you approach a gallery, what you're really saying is, hey, I'd like to go into business with you. Maybe just a little short-term 1-month business, but you want to think about that with a little bit of a business sense for your own protection as well. We know a lot of people who've gotten into gallery situations that are not good because the people are not honorable. And that sort of situation, if you think about it with a little bit of a business sense as well, sometimes you can protect yourself a little bit better.
That's a really good point.
You want to make sure you have an agreement. You want to make sure you have, a record of what they have, things that are documented. You just want to have some basics taken care of. And that's always, I think, always a good idea. And if those things aren't there, you should think about that.
Yes, that is a very good point. That is an excellent point. Because I think sometimes, especially early on, especially when it's the first experience with a gallery, I think a lot of people are just so excited that they're in a gallery that they don't think about all of those things that you just mentioned. Like, yeah, you should know what paintings are there, because believe it or not, you might forget, things happen, or, you might think I gave him a painting, but was it that one or that one, because you're so emotionally charged.
And what's the agreed upon price, and what's the discount strategy? I actually just saw a really experienced artist that we know who's been around for a long time, is pretty successful, who had given a bunch of work to a business to display in the business in a restaurant, and they went under, and she just figured that out. And of course, her paintings are, God knows where they are. Oh. And so now she's struggling to get them back. But it was the same thing. It was like, this is a great opportunity. It's a fancy restaurant, blah, blah, blah. But, it happens to people. It happens to all kinds of people at different points in their careers. It's just good to be careful a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious, what is your vision for your gallery? For where would you like to, in a perfect world, I guess, or like if you could wave a magic wand, where would you like to take your gallery, or what would you like to see happen with it?
Well, one of the things that we wanted to happen was to get a more permanent home for it. And that I think we've just accomplished because we're in our third location. And so that's been really great, is to have a place that's in a spot that we were able to build out for the gallery. So that's been really, really just great. A lot of what we're working on now is just really working with our artists and making sure that the shows that we do are interesting and varied. And that we have some things that we do every year that are kind of become almost traditions for us, but we like to do some things that are different every year as well. And so part of it is just making sure that we're keeping fresh and meeting new people and new artists and coming up with new shows. And then we're also having a pretty good time. It's a lot of work, but we're having a pretty good time with our online presence as well. And so that's something we'd like to continue to grow as well, because it's fun. And we reached a ton of people that, we don't necessarily see in San Francisco. So that's kind of fun as well. So those are things that we'll continue to work on.
Very cool. Jennifer, thank you so much for talking with me. I've really enjoyed it. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you. It's definitely fun for us too. Come visit us when you're in San Francisco.
I will. I absolutely will. Thank you again to Jennifer for sharing her insights with us. And I also want to thank Kathy Beeler for connecting us. Go to savvypainter.com for the show notes on this episode. You can see pictures of Studio Gallery and get links to see the work of the artists mentioned in this show. And if you're in the San Francisco Bay Area, stop by and support some of the local Bay Area artists. I want to give a big thank you and shout out to some very special people who have supported this show. Thank you so much to Amy Fitzgerald, Frances Cockburn, Kathy Beeler, Colleen Gallo, Ode Nevius, Nooner Media, Jiyoung Kim Studio, Barbara Chantre, Greg Decker, Patricia Matrenga, Denise Klitzy, Deb Cook Shapiro, Jeanette Gray, Alchemy Works, Kathy Nowes, Karen O'Connell, Carolyn Green, Sylvia Bailey, Hillary Ramberg, Winslow Art Center, Abby McGray, Barry Koplowitz, Art of Joy, and Gail Height. Thank you so much for your support of this podcast. One more thing I want to let you know. This year, you can expect a lot more workshops from Savvy Painter. If you are an artist who struggles with getting painting time in or feels like you're always busy but never really moving forward with your art, then my workshops just might interest you. Past workshops include Mindset Mastery, a 5-week online workshop to help you get past the roadblocks that keep you from painting. In it, we tackle the inner critic, fears of artists, and setting yourself up for a successful creative day. The workshop, How to Develop a Relationship with the Right Gallery, helped several artists find the right gallery and show their work. So if this is something that interests you, you can go to savvypainter.com/workshop and get on the email list. This is separate from the main list that tells you when a new episode comes out. This is just for the workshop, so you don't get quite as many emails, but when you do, there's always something really good happening. Sign up now and get a downloadable PDF with case studies that tell you exactly how 3 artists pushed through barriers that were getting in the way of their studio time. You can, for example, learn how Rhonda went from not wanting to call herself an artist to getting her very first solo show. Also, listen to an introverted artist describe how she built her confidence and then spoke in front of an audience of her peers. And you can discover the tools that Samantha used to take back her power after a decade of believing that she had no, I'm putting air quotes there, she had no talent. So again, go to savvypainter.com/workshop to reserve your place on the list. When you sign up, you get that downloadable case studies that I mentioned, but more importantly, you get exclusive invites to upcoming workshops. Most of the time when I launch a new program, it sells out before I ever announce it publicly. So reserve your spot now at savvypainter.com/workshop. Until next week, this is Antrese Wood with the Savvy Painter Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.